Today on Earth Focus, Fracking Britain. Citizen activists gear up to fight natural gas development. Coming up on Earth Focus.
When you're driving down Peel Road, you can smell gas. It's horrible.
The earthquakes that caused.
It's all about money. They've taken oil from the North Sea, and the North Sea's not disappeared, so we'll have to see what happens.
Hydraulic fracturing, or fracking as it is known, involves pumping a mixture of water, sand and chemicals into the ground in order to extract natural gas. The technique is widespread in the US, and now energy companies are looking elsewhere for shale gas sources. But fracking is controversial and linked to a number of environmental and social problems.
This is the water that's in my well, and supposedly I'm supposed to be drinking it.
And there was just like this red, nasty water just coming, just oozing out the side of the mountain, just the side of the hill.
In the UK, fracking is seriously going to change the landscape. It's going to industrialise the UK in a manner which most people just do not realise.
In the UK, the government recently lifted a moratorium on the process, paving the way, say campaigners, for an unprecedented dash for gas.
The government's plans on fracking are indeed hugely controversial, and for very good reason too. The Committee on Climate Change, for example, has said that not only will a dash for gas completely bust our climate targets in terms of getting our emissions down, but is also likely to lead to higher fuel bills as well.
Opponents say fracking is just one part of a much wider trend of extreme energy extraction.
A significant number of licences have already been sold across the country, and we expect more to be sold soon in the 14th round. As much as 3/5 of the country is up for grabs, and people are right to be concerned about this because the government are trying to change the system so that local planning is bypassed, so that large investors can go directly to the government to get approval for this kind of stuff. In the UK, we're seeing the start of shale exploration. We're actually seeing coal bed methane licenses production licenses applied for coal bed methane, and we're seeing areas of the coastline, around our coastline, sold off for potential underground coal gasification. So 3 unconventional gas technologies which could come to the country, but some have already arrived.
You can't look at shale gas or fracking as a single thing. What we're looking at is extreme energy, and extreme energy isn't just about the technologies. Extreme energy requires extreme finance, it requires extreme economics, it's extreme governance, because to force these measures through, they are engineering a system to allow the large-scale depopulation of the countryside.
But advocates say the issue has become sensationalised.
And the image of lighting your water faucet on fire has become the viewpoint, or the image of fracking around the world. Now the reality is the media loves sensationalism, and that has now transcended the entire scientific evidence that says that fracking is safe.
Fearing the worst, communities up and down the country have begun to mobilise.
This is a letter to David Cameron, signed by signatories from Sussex, Falkirk, Belfast, Lancashire, Fylde and Ribble Estuary and the Vale of Glamorgan, calling for an immediate ban on shale gas and coal bed methane exploitation in the UK. And we are delivering it in solidarity from all regions to number 10 in about half an hour.
I think communities are quite right to be very worried about the impact of much drilling and fracking around their local communities. We know from what's happened in other places that there are real risks of water pollution, for example. And let's not forget that there is, what we're talking about here is potentially a huge number of wells. I mean, under some estimates, we're talking about up to 2,400 wells being drilled across the UK, sometimes in incredibly sensitive areas.
What needs to be done in order to resist these processes, because we do need to resist them, fracking needs to be resisted. From an ecological crisis point of view, we don't need it, it shouldn't be taking place.
I think their concerns are based on misinformation. They're based on what they've read or seen secondhand. Because when you look at people in Europe, they have concerns that are not based on personal knowledge, because there is no fracking in Europe. So if you have a resident in Blackpool and their concern is because they think that it's causing an earthquake, okay, they have a fear or concern of that. It's not based on fact or fiction, it's based on their perception. But if I go tell you you're wrong, well, you're going to tell me that I'm wrong.
In Falkirk, Scotland, these local residents are using both traditional and new campaigning methods to fight a coalbed methane, CBM, development.
Our main concerns are with water pollution, air pollution, and also quite seriously fugitive methane emissions from the plants, which could seriously jeopardise our climate change targets.
This organic farmer is concerned, despite living a considerable distance from the proposed development.
So it's all part of one big landscape system, with the Trossachs Mountains to the north and the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park to the west. So it's difficult to separate out what's going on in Falkirk to its wider landscape context.
In Lancashire, the potential impact of fracking on the region's farmland has also worried communities living near to gas drilling operations.
My biggest fear is this area is a green area, and there's a lot of salad crops grown here, and it is a very important area for salad crops in this country, and we distribute our crops to all over the UK. This kind of industry here in Lancashire, with the amount of wells that they need to make it economically viable, will completely destroy that.
This isn't going to bring jobs or security, fuel security for the Fylde area. There are huge unknowns about health risks to the water, the aquifers. This isn't a stable area, it's liable to subsidence at the best of times, and there are all sorts of risks associated, and it's just a retrograde step, and we need to be investing in renewables for the long-term future. This is very, very short-term and potentially disastrous.
Reports in the US have recently suggested fracking may be linked to illness in some farm animals. Opposition to fracking in Lancashire grew dramatically following an earthquake linked to exploratory gas drilling.
How's it affected my life? Well, it's taken a year of my life out because I cannot walk away from this. This is too big a thing. I had a normal life for the first 50 years of my life. Then fracking came into my life. It's going to devastate the whole country. I cannot walk away from this. People need to know about it. Once they know the facts, they will say, stop fracking. Everybody we've spoken to say, why is this going on?
This led directly to the temporary nationwide moratorium. Although this has now been lifted, some communities remain in limbo.
Yeah, that's it. We go ahead. We weren't surprised.
In Sussex, it is unclear whether fracking near Balcombe will go ahead.
Fracking is a process I wouldn't wish on anyone, anywhere. I think it's a poisonous, potentially very dangerous process. Here in Sussex, in Balcombe, we live in a beautiful part of the world. It is classified as an area of outstanding natural beauty. People have livestock, there are farms, we have beautiful streams running through. It's a lovely place to live. Fracking and the industrialization of the landscape could ruin that.
Locals worry about the potential impact on the area's water supply.
Forcing high volumes of water and carcinogenic chemicals into the ground at a kind of pressure that would fracture a million-year-old rock, relying on your own cement casings, that is going to leak. It's going to go through, it's going to get into the groundwater, it's going to get into the aquifer, it's going to get into the reservoirs. The gas is going to leak into the atmosphere. Water meets water. Water goes from everywhere to everywhere. You can't separate it. You can't legislate for the vagaries of subterranean geology. It's really, really silly.
Experts are now asking whether the full cost implications have yet been fully considered.
If there was serious groundwater pollution, then it would cost a lot of money to clean that water. But it could be that it would be such an expense that it wouldn't actually be worth doing, and therefore you're going to be left with a long-term pollution problem in that particular vicinity, in that particular community.
Fracking chiefs say much of the opposition is based on misinformation.
It's not fracking is unsafe, not the procedure is unsafe, but if someone makes a mistake, then anything can happen. And I think that people are foolish to think that there's some form of energy, and that includes wind or solar or any other type of energy, nuclear, we saw what happened in Japan, that comes without any kind of risk, that pops out of the ground, powers the plug in your wall, and produces energy that has no consequence or risk. And that's just not possible.
They're trying to convince us that they're going to do it safely. Safe fracking is the oxymoron of the decade.
Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.